How are you? Good. It's a nice cozy crew this evening. Thank you for joining us. I know that this event is in conflict with the middle school back to school night, and due to just there's only so many nights in April. It's not April. It's October. I'm pretty sure. We decided to stick with it. We are recording this thanks to our WakeCam friends, and of course we'll be sharing all of the slides and materials with folks for all of you for reinforcement of information and all of our friends who can't be here this evening. I have to say it's such a joyful thing to see, of course, new faces arriving to our high school theater. Please raise your hand if this is the first time. Like you maybe made it in the spring for 8th grade parents night, but this is kind of your first evening as a high school parent coming to campus. So a special warm welcome to all of you. And then repeat folks, it's great to always see some familiar faces. And I'm always impressed when parents who have had multiple folks come through our doors are still here on 9th grade parents night. So this evening we are, because it is such a cozy crew, we're going to keep this fairly casual and pause regularly and ask to see if you have questions for us. We can do that in this kind of a setting, even though I'm standing on the stage and speaking into a microphone. Please feel free to interrupt us, to add insights, to add your questions as we're moving through our program this evening. I will also mention that our projector is on the fritz, which is why we have this handy-dandy teeny-weeny screen here, which makes it even more important that we share the slides with you after this evening. So you'll be able to see kind of what we're talking about because the print's going to be a little small. The other part is that I can't actually see what's happening here, so I'm going to just go like that. All right, so what are we doing tonight? We are going to talk with you about Wayland High School, particularly through the lens of our new students and our 9th graders. And I think there's so Mr. Gass is going to help me. Okay, that's good too. All right, so who are we? We're going to orient you around the high school and kind of provide some, then I don't know if our friends here can see it, but that's...
Are you guys okay with it? No?
This is what we do. We just roll with it. We just make things happen. All right. We're going to introduce some really important people who are here. We're going to answer your questions, and then we do want to hear from you about how you're doing and how your students are doing with this momentous transition to Wayland High School. So I'm Allison, the principal here at the high school, and I'm going to turn it over to some introductions of the important people on my right. I think starting with Ms. Laura Cole.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Cole. I'm one of the assistant principals here at the high school. I'm assigned to work with the class of 2024 and 2026. But I'm definitely going to work with your students. I'm out there every day, so I really work closely with Mr. Gass around disciplinary matters or just checking in with students. So you're going to get to know me, but your main administrator will be Mr. Gass. But just a little bit about me. I'm local. I grew up right down the road in Natick, Massachusetts. I have a 6-year-old son who's in 1st grade at Loker. He is loving every aspect of Loker. I have 2 dogs named Rambo and Tucker. In my previous position, I was at Lincoln Sudbury Regional High School, and I was the director of counseling there. And I also worked as a counselor at my time there. I was introduced into the world of education, interestingly, through working with students who were struggling with addiction and bringing them back into a public school setting. And so that's kind of how my career in education started. It didn't start in the classroom, so it started in kind of an alternate route. Outside of school, I just enjoy being with my family. I love watching college football. I love baseball. The Red Sox are heartbreaking this year, but I was just saying to Mr. Buckle, I don't care. I saw them win in 04, and I think that's enough for me. Thank you for making my early 20s great. But overall, if you ever need anything, feel free to reach out to me, Mr. Gass. But if you have any questions, we'll be here tonight. I'm handing it over to Mr. Gass.
Hi everybody, it's really good to see you all here. I know some of us have already gotten a chance to email and talk a little bit, and I've gotten a chance to meet some of your kids, which has been the best part of the last 3 weeks for us. I'm one of the other assistant principal. I work very closely with Ms. Cole. I work with your kids in this grade level, and I'll follow them for the next 4 years. So the way that we kind of divide our caseload is we loop with grade levels. So right now, Laura has 10th and 12th grade, and I have 9th and 11th grade, and so I'll work with your kids for the next 4 years. It doesn't mean I'm the only person you'll work with by any stretch, but I'll be one of the sort of point people for you. I'm sort of local. I grew up in Cambridge, and I spent a long time living in San Francisco, which is where I became an educator. I have 2 kids, Ozzy, who's 7 in 2nd grade, and my son Miles is 10, and he is in 5th grade. We have a giant Bernese pit bull mix that tears apart my house every day, which happened this morning. And I came to education through teaching. So I was an English teacher first, and I quickly became a history teacher. I taught humanities, like a combined English and history course, in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, and I taught AP English in the 12th grade as well. And then I moved over into administration and became a turnaround coach in San Francisco Unified School District. And from there, moved to Salem, to move back to Boston, to be closer to parents, and that found my way to Wayland. So I feel incredibly lucky to work here, and I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Buffa.
Hi everyone, I'm Mr. Buffa. Sorry, my voice is kind of loud, so I'm going to keep it over here. So I am the new counseling department head. I've been at the high school, this is my 14th year, so I'm not a new face to the school, but I am a new face to this role. It's been a great year so far, and I should actually stop for a second and just say my standard kind of gushing line. We have an unbelievable administrative team. We are super, super lucky to work with them. When I talk to kids about our administrators, I kind of say that they're almost counselors first and administrators second. And that is a pretty remarkable thing that we have here. So I'm sorry to embarrass you, but I do it every time. So I grew up on Cape Cod in Chatham. We still go back every summer. I love kind of going down there, and my mom absolutely soaks it up. My 6-year-old daughter and her are big beach fans. I'm not as big of a beach fan anymore, but we humor them and we go for hours, and it's pretty cool getting to see her play with my mom on the same beach that my brother and I grew up on. This handsome devil here, as you can see, is Gruff, and I think a lot of you know Gruff already. He's our new therapy dog. He is the sweetest, kindest dog in the world. He can be a little bit of a wimp sometimes, but he's still a year and a half old and kind of getting comfy here. So it's a really remarkable thing getting to watch him in action. I joke all the time, but it's not really a joke. He is our best counselor, and it's, having that dog dad pride. When I see it, even just today, I'm thinking of dozens of kids that came by and just watching them interact with him and how amazing of a thing it is. And we've had therapy dogs here for a while, but this is his first year. So, and then anybody who knows me knows that I love golf. I like watching it, playing it, talking about it. It's kind of what I fill my free time with, other than hanging with my family. So, I don't have any 9th graders this year. I didn't take a caseload because I already have a large caseload of juniors and seniors. It's been really great getting to meet a lot of your kids in 9th grade seminars and in the office. And again, anytime they need help, just tell them to come on down to the counseling office. We're here for them. I think Amy's up next. Yeah, cool.
Hi, I'm Amy Lima. I'm the Academic Support Coordinator here at Wayland High School. I got my vaccines today, so a little advertisement for you as well as my red band-aids on my arms. I grew up in Canton, so not too far away. This is my 6th year here at Wayland High School. Before this, I was an English teacher for many years. I had a role called Assistant Principal of Student Support Services, that really sort of directed me into this role here at Wayland High School, where I really discovered this passion I had for supporting students when they needed some sort of intervention to help them be successful in school. I sort of convinced my husband to also join education. He was working in video production and now is a video production teacher. And we have 3 amazing daughters. There's a lot of pictures of them there. Isadora, who is almost 5, Liliana, and Rosalina, who are 3-year-old twins. We also have 2 cats, and the girls torment them, not on purpose, just because they're small children chasing even smaller cats. What do I like to do? I like to be outside, and I like to read, spend time with my kids. I like to make things, which tends to end up happening in the kitchen because I don't have time to make much else. And when I was studying in college, I was both an English major and a theater major, so theater is sort of another passion of mine that and connect with a lot of students over. I think that's everything you need to know about me.
Perfect. All right, and this is me. All you really need to know about me is I've been here a very long time. So I started as an English teacher about 25 years ago. It was my first teaching gig, became assistant principal, and now somehow it is my 10th year as principal here at the high school. I'm a California native, go Padres, and love everything California. And I actually have two teenagers at home, one of whom attends school here, and the other who is at the middle school in the 8th grade. I'm so pleased to introduce Sejal Srinivasan, our PTO president, who's going to provide a little bit of information about the PTO and all the things that they're up to.
Thanks, Allison. Hi, everybody. I'm Sejal Srinivasan, the high school PTO president. We have an 11th grader and a 12th grader. So almost done and getting ready to empty nest. Not too soon. I gotta mentally prepare myself. Anyway, I do want to tell you a little bit about the PTO. We work really closely with the administration and the staff to really think about the student experience, the faculty experience teaching here, and try to enhance it in different ways. We put in about $20,000 worth of funding and many hours on top of that. 70% of what we put in goes towards student activities, whether it's learning materials like refreshing classroom libraries, bringing in speakers, things along those lines. About 20% goes towards staff, and that includes staff appreciation events to just show them that we appreciate all that they do for our kids. Give them little somethings throughout the year. We also run a grant cycle where they can submit to get some funding. We've gotten some really cool ideas to try out, a biology modeling kit or a new type of Zoom lens for journalism class. Just all kinds of different ideas. Our teachers are really creative, so it's fun to see the types of things they come forward with, and really fun to be able to say, sure, go and do it, and ultimately see it often come into the curriculum later on. The last piece of what we do is around the community, so we hold parent enrichment seminars about once every 6 weeks or so. They're called the Chat Hour. We leverage a lot of the staff. As you saw, we have lots of great people here that are wonderful resources, and they will share some of the experience that their students are having, and then sometimes bring in some outside speakers as well. Flipping to the
Sure.
next, thank you. We wrote a couple of years ago the Insider's Guide, so if you are new to the high school, I definitely suggest you scan this. This is sort of a parent-to-parent guide, like the Commons where you all walk through. It's not the cafeteria, it's the Commons. And even this is now my 4th year at the high school, I still learn a little something every time you kind of refresh it. Or someone will ask me something, I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'll add that to the Insider's Guide. So worthwhile to scan. It's just a resource that we put out. And then finally, all of our funding comes from donations from our parent community. So if you could do a donation to give to your child, any amount helps. We try to get everybody to participate to whatever degree we can. We have the chat hours, as I mentioned. Next week's newsletter will have the dates for the full year and the topics as well. The PTO News is just a section in the e-news that comes out on Fridays, so you can look for all of our updates on there. We also have a Facebook group that we are able to put some pictures and share some more details. Try to get in the building and show some of the stuff that the kids are up to. Because your kids are like my kids, you don't hear anything from them when they come home. And I think that's it. I put my email at the bottom there and our website, and it's great to have you guys here. Thank you. Thanks, Allison.
A couple of other plugs for the amazing parental support that we have here at the high school. Our Boosters Association is incredibly supportive of all of our athletics programs. We also have Kappa supporting the fine arts throughout our district, and we also have CPAC, which is a parent organization for students with special services. All of these slides and information, of course, we'll be pushing out to you. So let's get into 9th grade and the experience of our 9th graders. This conversation here will sort of focus on kind of big themes and topics that we think to hit on, but again, if there are specific situations or questions that you have, please let us know if we can fill in any gaps. I think I'm going to turn it over to Sean. All right.
All right, so we talk with kids a lot, we talk with parents a lot, and we try and figure out what are some of the biggest changes between 8th grade and 9th grade. And we want to point these out to you at this time of the year, early now, so that you can kind of have this in your head and sort of be ready for some of these things. So one of the big changes that students recognize, and that you might recognize as well, is that there's increased freedom and independence at the high school. So students are not like their cell phones can stay in their pockets. Hopefully they stay in their pockets. They can move about the building much more freely. There's more opportunities for them to make choices about how they're spending their time. Along with that, we have students need to develop some self-discipline. They need to develop some really good work habits, and that can be a bit of an adjustment in their 9th grade year. So students say this, parents say this, teachers notice this as well. Freedom and independence is a huge part of the 9th grade, and it can be a bit of a growing pain. The other piece that you may have already noticed, how many of you already noticed a little bit of increased academic rigor? Okay, how about like increased stress? Some of that too? Okay. So students experience an increase in academic rigor for sure. And in our next slide, we're going to talk about all the different supports that are out there for that. They're not alone experiencing this. You're not alone experiencing this. It becomes more difficult when they get here. If your student, I think almost all of your students went to the Wayland Middle School, there's a different grading system in the middle school where they grade using standards-based grading, and suddenly they come here and the grades change to point-based grading. And that can be a bit of an adjustment. Things like exams that don't have retake options, or pieces of writing that don't have rewrite options. Those are things that are a bit of an adjustment for a student, and do increase the academic rigor, increase the pressure a little bit. There's also more honors classes here in the high school, so students can challenge themselves by taking higher level courses, and they can do that at increasing levels over the next 4 years. So they can end up in 12th grade with a full AP course load. We don't recommend that, but that is possible, and some students that will be the right fit for them. So students notice a lot of increased academic rigor. We also see a real increase in responsibility and self-advocacy. So we ask students to take more responsibility of their own learning. We ask them to tell us what they need in the classroom and what they need in terms of extra help. One of the things that Amy's going to talk about at length is our Academic Support Center. Teachers are also available for a lot of extra help, and we rely on students to sort of advocate for themselves and ask for that help if they need it. It doesn't mean that we're not also watching and like making sure that we notify you when we're seeing something go wrong, but we are trying to encourage students to take some responsibility for their own academic success and to advocate for what they need as a student as well. I want to sort of touch on one other thing that's not listed right on here, but it's something that's hugely important, and we've been struggling with a little bit in the past, ever since COVID, but that is attendance. So one of the things that we see, and this is like the most consistent thing that educators see from, I don't know, kindergarten probably all the way through the end of college, is that attendance and academic achievement are the most correlated things that we see. So students that are here, that are present, and that are on time, and that are engaged in learning for the whole period of the class do better. There's just no way to replace class time with anything else that will have the same kind of impact. So in the pandemic, we had to, right? We were all kind of desperately trying to figure out how to continue learning while we had to be so far apart from each other. And that gave some of us a temporary idea that could replace some of that in-person learning. It really doesn't replace it. It's not a one-to-one. So if students miss class, when students miss even minutes of class, they miss learning, and that makes things become harder and harder. And with that increased academic rigor, we just want to emphasize the importance of attendance for all of you. And if you are struggling with attendance, please reach out to your student's counselor, reach out to me, reach out to anyone here at school and say, hey, I'm having a really hard time getting my kid up in the morning. I'm having a really hard time, making sure that they're ready to go in the classroom. we may also reach out to you and have maybe already reached out to you and saying, we're having a hard time getting your kid into class after lunch, or keeping them focused throughout the whole class period. But attendance is really, really important. So if we could ask, this is my little ask here, because you're gonna hear from me about attendance probably a lot over the course of the year, but talk to your kid about how important it is to be in that classroom for all those minutes, because that's one of the ways that they can be most successful. All right, now that I've maybe freaked you out a little bit, I'm gonna turn it over to Ben. He's gonna unfreak you out.
First round. Wait, this side? I think it always comes up. Oh, it doesn't. Okay. All right. So as Sean mentioned, and I talk to ninth graders about this in our seminar program, which is one of the supports that I will talk about in a moment here. When I think back to my first year here in 2010, it's almost unrecognizable to me the amount of support that ninth graders do get now, and it's kind of incrementally year after year increase, and it's still, I think, the jump from 8th grade to 9th grade is always going to be a big jump for students, and it should be to some degree, but it really has been great to see a lot of these supports put into place over the years. So one of the first ones is our Summer Bridge program, and this again is, I think we had about 60 or 70, if I'm not mistaken, students in that program. In the past, it's been a week long or so. This year, it was a couple days right before school started. And it actually, in a number of ways, mirrored some of the things we do with students in our 9th grade seminar, helping them kind of make the transition to high school, getting prepared for, again, the increased academic rigor, how to communicate appropriately with teachers, how to know about the supports and how to access those supports. So that's been a really, really wonderful thing, and Sarah Porgasami, who helped run that this year, has been really helpful with us too. We're going to steal some of her lessons for our 9th grade seminar for the next year, because they did a really great job with that. We also have counselors, and again, Mark Lydell is our academic MEDCO coordinator. Again, counselors, we want you to think of us as your child's go-to person, and really your go-to person as well. When you don't know where to go, or your child doesn't know where to go, we want them to come to us, and if we can help them, we will. If we can't help them, if they come asking for help with physics homework, they don't want that, so we can help kind of connect them with somebody that can help them out. So again, we want them to see us as that person, and the nice thing is, we stay with each student for the entire 4 years that they're here, and it really helps us kind of establish a deep, meaningful relationship with each of our students. Advisory is another program that it's another opportunity for every student to have another kind of connection with a faculty member or two. There are pairs of advisors that meet with students, and it's about 7 minutes a day, every day except for Wednesday. And then probably 7 or 8 times a year we have extended advisories where different topics and activities are discussed. So again, it's just another opportunity for students to connect with adults here on campus and have somebody they can reach out to in their time of need. Study halls, as Sean talked about, there is increased academic rigor, and one of the things we really talk to students about in 9th grade is using these study halls to start getting the right habits ingrained. We talk about student skills a lot: time management, planning, organization, self-advocacy. These are the skills that students really need to develop, and the curriculum is a vehicle to help students develop these skills, but those are the kind of student skills that we really want them to start developing. We also want them to start thinking a little bit more long-term. Not just what's on my plate in front of me today, but what's coming up down the road, what's coming up next week, right? You don't have to think too far ahead, but for students, we have a lot of students who are very busy, taking a lot of challenging classes. They're doing sports, the clubs, the play, I don't know how they do it all, to be honest with you. So we really try to have them think about, the whole week, think about next week. We try to have them start stretching themselves a little bit, because that's the more long-term planning is really important for these students. 9th grade seminars, again, these are led by a counselor, and they're co-led by peer mentors that we have. 11th and 12th graders who sign on to kind of help give the student perspective in these classes. This is where we talk about a lot of the nuts and bolts transition stuff. We talk about, again, student skills, the difference between high school and middle school. We talk about credits and transcripts and grades, and just a lot of the things that they're really going to need to become familiar with as they start to get acclimated to high school. The counselors lead the first 3 sessions, and then Amy Lima comes in. She'll talk a little bit more about the academic center, but she leads the 4th and 5th cycles. Administrators lead the final cycle of the first quarter, and then we have a 4 or 5 unit session on information literacy that our librarian Jen McGillis teaches. So that's the seminar, and it does last for the whole first semester. But it's another opportunity for kids to kind of connect with counselors, put a face to the name, and again, just kind of learn about the nuts and bolts of the school as they're transitioning in. And then the Academic Support Center, again, I won't talk too much about that because Amy's going to be speaking about it in a moment. But it's another, again, I tell students all the time, we are incredibly lucky to have a general education support like this. I've only ever worked here, so I can't honestly say that I know what other schools look like. I don't think a lot of schools have something like this, and if they do, it's certainly not as robust as the one that we have. So we are very fortunate to have that. I'm not sure who's up next, but oh, Amy's up next. Sweet. I get to talk about.
So as Ben was saying, I run our Academic Support Center. It's really an amazing resource for students. So it's a drop-in space available to every student in the school anytime they have free time. So this could be during a study hall for our ninth graders. They can ask their study hall teacher, can they go to the Academic Support Center? As they advance through high school and earn free periods, they can drop in during free periods. Sometimes students will spend part of their lunch in the room, before school, after school. Students can also be scheduled into the Academic Support Center, so some of your students may have started the school year with academic support written right on their schedule because the middle school thought that that would benefit them as they transitioned, and students are already sort of being identified by their teachers who weren't identified at the middle school level to say, hey, can we provide some extra support for the student? What the support looks like is really individualized. Every student's needs are different, but a lot of it has to do with the sorts of things we're hearing a lot about tonight, those transition pieces from 8th to 9th grade, thinking about time management, organization, task initiation, not procrastinating, just all the sorts of things that it takes for a student to be successful here at Wayland High School. Students can also get help from peer tutors. As mentioned before, my background is in English, so I personally feel really comfortable helping students with English, history, the humanities assignments. We have teachers who are in the Academic Support Center on duty. Instead of having sort of lunch duty or hall duty, they can have duty in this classroom and help students when they have questions on their academics. And then the peer tutors are doing volunteer work to help other students in whatever subjects they feel are really confident for them. What else should I tell you? We have resources in the classroom. So if your child ever realizes midway through the day, oh my goodness, I needed colored pencils for my biology homework and I don't have any colored pencils with me at school today, we have colored pencils, we have rulers, calculators, protractors, headphones, like sort of any physical thing that you can think of that a student might suddenly need during the school day, they can come and borrow. So my caseload tends to be about 100 scheduled students, and it's primarily 9th graders, a little bit less 10th, 11th, and a handful of 12th graders keep that support scheduled. But you'll see if you ever were, I don't know, peering through the window, which probably you shouldn't do, but if you were peering through the window in the middle of the school day, you would see plenty of seniors and juniors in the space because they've learned it's a really helpful space for them and they just come back because they want to. So that's sort of really what I envision for students, to find a spot, whether it's my program or somewhere else, where they can become like the best student versions of themselves and get the support they need to be successful. I think that's everything I wanted to tell you about my space. I also run our Grader Intervention Program, so you could hear from me at some point if a teacher or a counselor, or you can reach out to me if you yourself have some concerns about how your student is doing. And the intervention may include the Academic Support Center, it may not. You could hear from me about sort of a Grader intervention concept in terms of how we can help a student be successful at high school. And I have no idea who's up next. Sean's.
I made sure I gave myself one fun slide after the doom and gloom one I just gave you before. So I want to tell you about the clubs here at Wayland High School. Our club, culture is amazing. We have 52 active clubs right now. Anything from ultimate frisbee to crochet to sewing, 2 different clubs, crochet and sewing. Never the two shall meet, apparently they have. You can walk through the South Building and run into the Rocketry Club that's hopefully not blowing up the building. And you can go over to the debate team, hang out with the mock trial kids, go to robotics, play chess at lunch with the chess club. There are a lot of different club opportunities. There are clubs that are related to particular identities, there are religious groups, there are interest groups that are what's the most recent one? The Passion for Fashion, which I'm going to go to that club meeting just to see what that even means, but it sounds like fun. But there are a lot of really active clubs and a lot of student leaders and faculty advisors that are working after school, before school, at lunch, and even sometimes on the weekends with these clubs. So we encourage you to get your child to engage with some club if possible. A lot of times if they're athletes, that can be hard because most of the clubs meet after school, but many of them don't, and if there's an off season, tell them to get involved with the club. There's lots of things that are out there. We are going to be sending out like a final list of clubs. We had our club fair 2 weeks ago, and then after the club fair, the clubs start meeting, they adjust their times, things like that, and then we're going to send out a final list that says, here's the club, here's the advisor, here are the student leaders, and then here's the meeting time and location. So you can encourage your kids to go and check out a meeting, or just reach out to the student leader or the faculty advisor to see how they can get involved, okay? All right, back to Ben.
Actually, I'm going to fold these up quickly, just so see. Beautiful. All right. So again, we want you all to kind of see us as resources for you. And I will say we do get quite busy during the day, so it can be difficult sometimes to kind of be able to pick up a phone call on a dime, or But we do have our emails. I think they are listed. If not, if you go on to the counseling Google site that we are creating now, I will say try to view it in actually Google Chrome now, because we've noticed as I've shifted it over to the Google Chrome interface, if you now look at it through Firefox, it comes up distorted. So it's a problem, but all of our the name range breakdowns are listed there for counselor caseloads. You can also find all of our wonderful smiling faces, and you can find our email addresses there too. It's first name _ last name. Yeah.
Can you just list or say who everyone is?
Yeah, of course. Let me just come over because I can't be serious.
So, all right, so that's me. That's Baruch. This is Miss Calderon. She's our new counselor. She came from the English high school. She was there for 13 years, and she's new to us. She's wonderful, though. A lot of you will have students on her caseload. Sarah Bodie's up there, and then Latoya Downs. So on actually this row over here on the right, these are kind of our adjustment / clinical counselors. So while people over here will actually have a set caseload of students, Jen, James, and Latoya, Jen actually does have a smaller caseload of students that work with our ALRT program. So students who have IEPs that are primarily social emotional, she works with a kind of closed caseload of those students. James and Latoya both have kind of rotating fluid caseloads, and they are very helpful. For instance, Latoya came about a couple of years ago during the pandemic when we were seeing this real massive uptick in mental health needs. A lot of us were kind of underwater, and in addition to doing the academic advising, course selection, future planning, we were all just not able to provide the support we wanted to those kids who were struggling with their mental health. So Latoya's been a wonderful resource we've had for the last couple of years. Students can drop by, you can refer students to her. If we're busy when a student comes by, she's generally available and they can see her there. So she's really, it's been a wonderful resource for us to have. And then Jim Gerard, I think Jim's been here the longest of all of us, if I'm not mistaken, 20 years, somewhere around there. He's been here for a long time. And Dennis Doherty, who's been here for similar to as long as I've been here. He's our basketball coach, and he actually went here. I believe he was the class of 1992. So I think Dennis probably rivals Coach Parsegian as far as bleeding orange and being away on the super fan goes. So. But again, these are just some things here, right? Some things about what you would reach out to us about. So if you have a concern regarding your student, whether it's academic, social, emotional, mental health, if you have information that you'd like to share with us, it is something that, especially for 9th grade parents, we love when you reach out to us early, because as we are getting to know your child, oh, I'm sorry. As we are getting to know your children, it takes a little while to develop that relationship. And we do have some ways that we try to start building that. For instance, we have something called the counselor info form that students will fill out as part of the 9th grade seminar. That helps give us some very general information about the student, their interests, some kind of early goal setting exercises and self-reflection. But when parents share that information with us too, whether it's in an email or a quick phone call, that is super, super helpful as a kind of starting point as we're building relationships with your child. So if your child is off to a great start and hit the ground running and everything is good, then that
you might not feel the need to reach out to us. But if you have anything you want to share with us, we are all ears, and we really welcome you to bring that information to us. Personal matters, question regarding schedules, again, especially in the beginning of the year, we do a lot of scheduling work, and once we get into course selection season, which is February through March, April, that's where we really kind of come together with students, and we kind of provide the global view as far as what they're taking for their course load. We have a lot of students who come see us and say, oh, I was recommended for all honors, but I'm not sure I can handle that. And so that's really where we come in. We talk about what they're doing outside of class, we talk about the whole package, and we talk about this word balance a lot. I think some of our kids get really sick of hearing us say it so much, but in a school like ours where the common problem seems to be overextending and doing too much, we really try to help students find their kind of unique challenge point where things aren't hard, things aren't easy, they're challenging themselves, but they have room for success. And then again, if you don't know where to go or who to ask, come see us. We'll either help you or we'll kind of point you in the right direction. You can also call our office. Monica Mulkern is our administrative assistant. She's wonderful, she's super helpful. So if it's something as simple as you need a schedule printed or a transfer printed or you need a report card or proof of residency for insurance discounts, you can call that main office and she'll be able to help you with that. And then finally, we have some tips about contacting teachers or who we contact if you have questions. So this first one, and again, you can always come to the counselor too if you have questions about a certain class, but really we encourage you to go to the teacher first if you have a question about that particular class. And as you can see here, in keeping with what Sean said, we are really trying to start having your children kind of advocate for themselves and reach out. And we know that in 9th grade, that can look very tricky and messy. So a lot of times we will sit with students and we'll say, hey, we're going to help you write an email to reach out to your teacher. Or we're going to walk you over, we're going to introduce you to your teacher. Because again, we can appreciate that 9th grade, these kids are still really young, and after the pandemic, a lot of these kids look more like 8th graders than I think 9th graders in some respects. So we're here to help them with that, but again, I always think of the old adage, we want to teach them to fish, we don't want to just give them fish. So we try, everything we do is kind of filtered through that lens of how can we give them the skills, how can we scaffold it, but then how can we have them do that thing on their own. That's a really important thing for us. Get in touch with the Academic Support Center for support during the school day. Again, you should talk to the teacher first, I would say, if you're having problems in the class, and that's your primary person for that subject area. But again, Ms. Lima, she just went over the supports that she offers, and it's a really wonderful menu of supports that we offer there. So, the main office for attendance, administrative needs. Liz Doyle is our front office worker, and you all don't get the privilege of hearing her wonderful announcements that she makes during the day. But she's very funny, and I know a lot of us, I think it's a lift in our day when we hear it over the loudspeaker. Department heads, if you have a question about levels for certain subjects, or if you're concerned about your child's experience in that class. Again, a lot of times counselors would be looped into that as well, and potentially even administrators, but starting with the department head of that subject is really the first place you want to go. And again, reaching out to administrators for anything. Like we tell the kids, yes, they do have to dole out discipline and punishment, that's part of the job, but again, they are here to support students and help students, and they're another really wonderful resource for your students and for you. So I think I might hand it back to you, Sean, or upcoming dates. Allison.
All right, thank you. So a couple of upcoming dates, and I'm going to talk about 9th grade conferences in a second as well. So later this month, there will be 9th grade conferences. I'll talk about that in a second. I did want to highlight our next chat hour. So the PTO hosted kind of parent coffee designed around topics that are of high interest, hopefully, to parents and caregivers. Actually, Matt Buffett is going to be our primary sort of guest, facilitating a discussion about sort of the future planning roadmap that happens grades 9 through 12 here at the high school. You're very early in that future planning roadmap, and we get feedback and questions from parents even of 9th graders, sort of like, how does this whole process work as far as planning for what's after high school? And so Ben's put together a really nice presentation kind of highlighting some of the topics and supports that are available to students in both seminars as well as in the counseling office. I did want to spend a quick minute talking about something brand new to this year, and I've been flooding you with messages about our 9th grade conferences. These will take place at some point this month. typically on 2 Wednesdays, but depending on the availability of the advisory teachers who are hosting those discussions, it may not be the 11th and 18th, it might be 2 different dates that are hopefully identified very clearly for you in messaging that is coming out or has already come out from your teachers, 9th grade advisory teacher, your students, 9th grade advisory teachers. These are 10-minute, meaningful, rich conversations about your kid. And so we're hoping that it will help bridge the connection that you're feeling to us and that understanding that we're able to gather about your student. It's early yet, and so a lot of the conversation will be actually info gathering from all of you about sort of how is it going, and then answering any sorts of questions, filling in some gaps, and then offering some insights about what your students' own goals are. They've been doing some reflecting and advisory, and we wanted to share some of those insights with you. There's a whole sign-up process using Sign Up Genius, and you will identify reserve a time slot online using a sign-up sheet, and then you can do it either virtually or in person. Either way is fine, and all the information is in some messaging that is coming out actually from your students, again, advisory teachers. We decided to structure it around your students' advisory because they are going to be with your child for all 4 years. Typically and theoretically, they are one of those point people in your child's life who will stay with them for their whole high school journey. And so it is a really wonderful opportunity for, I think, as a 9th grade advisory teacher, I can't wait actually to meet the parents of my 9th graders. I think it's wonderful to have that initial contact and then to be able to establish that relationship as time moves forward. So that is coming up this month as well. And that is new, so we're going to be learning from how this launches, and we'll do another round in March as well. All right, and over to Sean for one last slide, and then we'll see what kinds of questions you all have.
So this slide's going to seem like I rigged it, but I didn't. We asked our students, we surveyed at different points during the year, and at the end of last year, at one point, we surveyed a group of students and said, what advice would you like to give your parents if you could go back and talk to them when they were in 9th grade? So this is actually what students said, and you're going to see what I mean when I tell you that it looks like I rigged it, because it looks a little too cute and perfect. But here's what they said about what they would like to tell their parents if they could talk to them 3 years ago. One thing that they said is, let me make some mistakes and learn from them. That 9th grade year has a lot of mistakes in it. Let me make some of those. Another thing they said is, help me monitor my own grades, but don't do it for me constantly. So students did point out that if it felt like parents were on Home Access Center every 30 seconds throughout the day, that felt overwhelming. But if they never looked at it, that was probably not a good idea either. Teach me to prioritize sleep and mental health. When that's missing, I can't learn. No joke. Kids said, make me go to bed. So you can tell them that their future selves want you to do what you're doing tonight when you make them go to bed. Don't call my teacher first. Help me figure out how to contact them myself. It doesn't mean don't ever call my teacher. You definitely should call teachers or contact teachers. But kids said they really would like it if you could help them kind of write the first email or figure out, the best way to pop into their office hours. Come to my games and events. That's probably a no-brainer for you guys. Ask me questions. I know it doesn't seem like I want to answer, but I do. We did hear this is one of the most heartfelt things that we heard from a lot of kids. Like, I love it when my parents are, I think I hate it, and then I love it later when my parents ask me questions. Help me connect with my counselor. They're an important advocate for me. So a couple of students did point out that if they didn't have reason to directly interact with their counselor, sometimes it was like months before they knew that their counselor existed. So students said, like, it's helpful for parents to communicate with counselors, get them connected with their counselors as well. If I don't get A's, that's okay. Take that as you will. But they really, they felt like sometimes when they get here, there's like people surrounding them, the pressure level gets a little higher, they start to hear people talking about grades, and the pressure to get a solid group of A's can feel really overwhelming. So this is some of the things that that students did say that they would like to say to their parents in their 9th grade year. The last one was, when I need help, help me ask for it. So again, things that we've been talking about a lot here. If a student feels like they're struggling, they don't know how to self-advocate for themselves, help them write an email, help them connect with Ms. Lima, help them connect with their counselor, remind them that teachers are there to help them. And that's their advice to you guys. So take it for what you will. It does come out strikingly like you'd think it would. So a few years later, hindsight's 2020. Kids really seem to know what they need from their parents in their 9th grade year. All right, I think we're going to transition to some questions. So this is a big space with, and it's pretty quiet, so hopefully you guys are okay with just raising your hands. We're wondering what questions that you had for us, for anybody here on stage, or go for it. Does anybody have a question?
Yes.
I have a question. Just, can you explain a little more about advisory? Because I know it's different than your guidance, it's different than your guidance counselor. But what's the real, is advisory more of like just a homeroom check-in? Or can you just talk a little bit more about that? Yeah. Yep.
So, right, so advisory is, it's kind of like homeroom plus. So in that, students, unlike at the middle school where they move through teachers, have a different teacher every year, the real idea here is that they stay with a group of the same peers, and it is a same grade group of peers, about 14 to 16 of them, all 4 years with 2 adults. And in that space, so it's 7 minutes a day, except for Wednesdays, and you might be thinking, well, what can happen in 7 minutes, really? And we've experimented with this model without going into too much detail. We used to have once a week for 25 minutes, and realized we actually didn't have enough daily touch time to develop closer relationships with students. So now the touch time is briefer, but more regular, and in that conversation, we are either running a quick activity of team building, we're checking in on how the game go, how the tests go, what's happening this weekend for all of you. We are doing a Wordle. We are passing up flyers and information about upcoming events. So it becomes a communication portal and also a really nice way to bridge that relationship and watching them grow. So personally, I just had my senior advisor just graduated, and seeing them for all 4 years through the pandemic, for 7 minutes a day was incredibly meaningful for me, and seeing their growth, and I'm really excited about the 9th grade group that we have. So it's a surprisingly meaningful 7 minutes a day with students. And as Ben mentioned, periodically we extend that, so it's 25 minutes, either to debrief a really pressing situation that's happened, so we have a mechanism for debriefing a crisis that's occurred or a world event that we need to talk about. We also use it for things like course selection, reviewing the handbook, those kinds of things as well. Other questions? Please.
Hi, I was just curious about the counselor relationship. And I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but my junior, I just kind of understood the role of the counselor maybe this year.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of wondering how if you guys don't meet on a regular basis, like what are they there for kind of when they're a little bit younger? Or are they always there? Like what's the big, like, I'm not sure.
All right, I'm gonna pass it over to Ben because he's like back behind the microphone here.
So as I mentioned before, and I'm a big believer in like setting realistic expectations. So I think in the beginning of the year, there's a lot going on, right? So for instance, right now we're in the middle of early application season. We have a lot of seniors that end up applying at least to 1 or 2 places early. So it's kind of, sometimes there can be a matter of prioritizing. We have to meet with those kids right away at the same time when our 9th graders are coming in. There's a lot of transition stuff going on. The fall is very, very heavy with 9th and 12th graders. It's not to say that we don't meet with 10th and 11th graders as well. It's just sometimes we are so, you come down to our office those days, there's lines of kids. We talk to our kids a lot about reaching out to your counselor via email and saying, hey, I have a study hall during this day, this day, this day. Can I swing by and see you during one of those? We really try to condition them to kind of reach out that way because A lot of kids sometimes come down 3 or 4 times, they see that you're busy or you're not there, maybe you're in a seminar, maybe you're in an IEP meeting, whatever it is, and sometimes kids feel like, oh, they don't have time for me. We really try hard to make sure they know that that's not the case. We will make time for them. It's just it tends to be in our very busy and chaotic and unpredictable world that scheduling that time is really important. That said, and again, we'll talk more about this in the chat hour in a few weeks, but we really, in that 9th grade year, is kind of building that relationship with the counselor, getting to know them. We have to do a lot of work, and especially with certain students, to lay the groundwork for a relationship to grow. That can take a lot of time. Students really respect, and I know a lot of you are probably familiar with this, the kind of time and place thing, right? So if we try to force conversations or force issues with kids when they're not ready, the relationship's done. And sometimes it can take years to rebuild that trust. So we do a lot of work kind of planting that seed, reaching out, hey, we're here for you, reminding kids, right, letting them know that we're here, we're available, we're accessible, and then kind of trying to see if they'll come see us. And there are certain times if we're worried, or again, if a parent reaches out, a parent mentioned this at the chat hour last week, that some students we know are just not going to reach out on their own. That's really important for us to know if that's your kiddo, because it's a lot of kiddos, right, that are nervous about that. Then we can kind of find a way to say, hey, why don't you come see me during the study hall, let's chat for 5 or 10 minutes, and we start that kind of slow process of relationship building. Once we get into sophomore, junior, senior year, and the future planning train starts to kind of leave the station, and we pick up steam with that, they're comfortable with us, they know us, they've kind of gotten to know us over a couple years, and we're in a better position to kind of guide them through that process. So again, the support, I think you also asked about supports, like what exactly work we do with them. So again, academic advising and course selection, which is generally in, like I said, the late winter, early spring. We have students who come down asking us about internship opportunities when they get older, and we can help line them up with information there. Community service opportunities. Once they get into later years, building preliminary college lists, talking to them about the different parts of this sprawling process of this future planning, including non-college options, because even though a lot of our students do end up looking at a 2 or 4 year school, there are so many really good non-college options out there, and we try really hard to kind of talk to students about those and put those out there. So again, it can be very busy, it can be hard. I always like to make sure that parents don't have the impression that we're meeting with every student for half an hour a cycle or something like that, because again, we do have a lot of students on our caseloads. But I think talk to us, talk to your counselor. If your kiddo is in that boat and they're having trouble reaching out or they're a little more apprehensive, we can do a lot more to kind of try to pull them in and start developing that relationship.
I'll also mention that the seminar program that Ben was talking about in terms of the 9th graders takes place every year with a shifting focus around sort of what's developmentally appropriate for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. So there's a sophomore seminar program, there's a junior seminar program, and senior seminar program is happening right now along with the 9th grade seminars. So that's another opportunity, a small group, to get to know the school counselor. What else? What other questions do you have? Yes, please.
So I have a question about the academic rigor and like how the kids transition from sort of meeting expectations to now getting numbered grades. If they're at a point in early on in the year where maybe their grades are not as good as they would have expected or that we as a family would expect, are they given opportunities to bring up their grades without, or given that maybe they are not as favorable as we want?
Okay, so the question is really about kind of in response to this idea of increased academic rigor, what kinds of cushions are available to students if they are working really hard and maybe not achieving what they'd like because the grading is different here. And the language we use around grading is a little different as well. So I'm not going to say this is a universal thing, but as a matter of practice, it is a shift to go from, and we love the middle school philosophy and practice around the standards base because they develop, again, this philosophy around mastery, around continuing to try, around growth mindset and grit. All of that is so essential as they move into the high school, where the assessments are, in some cases, I would say less forgiving because they're not going to be necessarily in every case retaking things. I think that is probably one of the biggest shifts is that, what do you mean I don't have more opportunities to show my mastery? Instead, I would say, and again, this is very general, there are more opportunities to be assessed. And so teachers also want to know what their students know on a fairly regular basis, especially during the 8th to 9th grade transition, and in different ways. So I know in English classes, they're doing a lot of short pieces. They're practicing their writing and showing their teachers what they know. They're also taking in-class quizzes. They are having discussions. They are doing Socratic seminars. In science, there's a lot of different types of assessments so that teachers are assessing how they're transitioning and where their areas of growth are. I will say very honestly that I don't know that it's kind of incomparable to talk about standards-based versus the traditional grading model, and that's something I know that in our seminars we talk about with our students, how to adjust not just the practice, but the mindset, that I'm going to continue trying hard, I'm going to continue maintaining a growth mindset, and I'm going to get support when I'm struggling. And that struggle is part of the growth. It's an essential part of the growth. So we also want our students, and I think we seek these opportunities to converse with kids about this, that when something is hard, we lean into it. And that can be difficult, and that can be particularly challenging when they're not accustomed to accessing the supports here at the high school, which is why it's wonderful when we have an opportunity to share with you, here are the supports, and through seminar and through other conversations with kids, we're continually asking them and encouraging them to ask for help. So that's what's on my mind. Does anybody?
Yeah, well, me first. I'm going to sit, that's okay. I'm going to sit. So one of the things we just talked to 9th graders about, and actually just today in the 3rd cycle of 9th grade seminar, I was talking about it. We do a transcript review, and the idea there is not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I've learned over time how few juniors and sometimes seniors know what a transcript is. So we added it there, and one of the things we highlight is that only final grades go on that transcript ultimately. So while during the year in your report card you see quarter grades, at the end of the year it's just final grades. So that really insulates students from having a rough start, a rough quarter, a rough midterm. When it comes down to applying for internships or jobs or college or whatever comes down the road, they are not going to see those individual things, they're just going to see final averages. And I think for a lot of students that helps them take a deep breath and say, okay, I can afford making a mistake. Because again, it's one of the biggest problems nowadays is that kids feel like they cannot make mistakes. And we know that making mistakes is integral to the learning process and overcoming them and moving through them, right? So that's another thing that I would have.
I'm just going to stand up. I can't sit. So you said touch points, so I just want to say there are touch points for you to monitor your student. So Home Access Center is your friend. In here, you're able to see your student's class live. So you're able to see their classwork, what they've handed in, maybe even to what's upcoming. So you're still able to see that. We're also in the next week entering the mid-quarter, and in that time, you get warnings for teachers. So if your student is struggling, you're getting outreach like, hey, this is what's going on. The teachers may be saying, you know, they need to start needing you extra help. They may say an academic center might be a good idea. You might need to meet with your counselor. So you're going to get some outreach from the teachers directly. I will say, I just want to touch on our intervention program. We really spend, I worked with the 9th grade, so I feel like I deep dived into it last year. Like, we spent a lot of time looking at the 9th graders. And it's scary because, you know, meets expectation, what does that mean in an honors class versus that college level class, then versus my English 1 class. So they're trying to figure out what does this mean. And I will say that I think that the teachers in the 9th grade do a really great job of working with that and meeting kids where they are and explaining to them. It was really kind of fun. We were talking today to a teacher a kid was like, oh, so what's passing? And they were like, it's a 69 or 60. And they're like, great, that's passing. And she's like, that's not good. So let's talk about what a D is. So they're having these conversations because we know that this is something that they're like, what do you mean I can't retake it? What do you mean I can't? And that's hard, you know, and when you can't be perfect, that first time it's like, you can't do it, you can't be perfect. It's hard for me as an adult, like, what do you mean I can't redo that, Allison? What do you mean? So I will say our teachers, I think, since the middle school's moved to standard-based grading, our 9th grade team, I think, has done a really great job of pivoting the way they look at grading, and, you know, we work really closely doing your own, like, the way they look at grading, the way they look at how do you support kids in the first quarter. You're noticing an academic increase now. I would say probably around quarter 2, you're going to see another bump. and a little bit more expectation of, no, you should know this now. You students should be checking Home Access Center and know that you didn't hand that in. You're going to see a little bit more of that. So there are some touch points, and I would just say if there's one thing, if you don't know your home access username and password, get in touch with one of us, because that is a great way for you to I like to say it, like monitor what they're doing and ask them questions and start that conversation at the dinner table without being like, what did you do? Like, hey, I saw that you have an English paper coming up on X, Y, and Z. Do you need support? I know the last writing assignment was difficult. The Academic Center might work. So just really, I'd say those are really some good touch points. But next week, if there's trouble, you'll try to start hearing from teachers and maybe even from Ms. Lima if we have some supports to help. I hope that's helpful.
I forgot to mention earlier, Ben touched on it really briefly, but I'll be entering the 9th grade seminars for the next 2 cycles. So starting in the middle of next week, for 16 school days following that, I'll be running the 9th grade seminars, and my lessons are pretty specifically on how to prepare for assessments and sort of the student skills needed in order to be able to successfully prepare for the assessments, like paying attention and taking notes in class in the first place. So this is actually the ideal time for those lessons to come into the students' minds, because they've maybe had that first round of assessments, or maybe 2 assessments in each class at this point, and they might be saying, oh yes, I need to figure out a different approach to studying at Wayland High School than I needed at Wayland Middle School. So I will be entering all of the seminar classes. So by like the end of October, your children should have a whole bunch of new tricks up their sleeves in terms of studying. So that's another thing you could ask them about. Or if you're interested in learning sort of about what are the techniques that I'm considering to teach to them, feel free to reach out to me and I can share some information with you to reinforce at home when your child is saying, I don't know how to study for this test. I really love teaching those lessons. It's really exciting. You guys meet every single 9th grade student as well. So I'll be a familiar face to every 9th grader. So that could help with those conversations if you're having them at home to say, hey, did you consider seeking out help in the Academic Support Center? They'll have met me, know that I'm like not a scary, terrible person to come and see, that it's a nice, supportive environment. Anyone else?
All right, I'm mindful it's 8:05. So if you need to leave, we will not be offended. Feel free to tiptoe out. And why don't we agree to stay for another 5 minutes if there's a couple more questions. So please.
Hi. I have a question still on academics. And so in terms, I know that we have like Khan Academy that we could use at home to like help our kids with certain subjects. Like, are there any suggestions like high school level? Because I haven't gone on Khan Academy to see like whether or not there are like high school level things. Like, are there other suggestions around like English class, history, that we could, because I'm not a math person, but like I just had to relearn geometry.
Yeah.
And like, oh, okay. So now I'm like going through that again. So Khan Academy was helpful for that, but then I'm sort of like, I want him to have like study tools, right? Because sometimes just having that study guide is not enough. It needs to be like a visual or some audio or something like that. Is there any suggestions that people or teachers are given so that we can have like, I know that we could look and see what it is that they're working on, right? But you guys are educators and probably have way more patience than I do at mom yelling like, when I raise my voice, all of a sudden he's going to understand the thing. So I think tools would be very helpful.
And wait till he's a pre-calculus, right? It just keeps getting more and more abstract. I'll hand it over to Amy, but I would say that outside online support, there are plentiful ways for students to access that. I would have your student ask the teacher if they have any suggestions around resources like that they could explore on their own time. And I would also encourage your student to reach out and get the in-person support from their teacher as well. I totally get it's nice to have those other supports that can be accessed outside the school day at his convenience, and that does not involve tense moments with you. So the teacher might have some ideas, and then definitely connecting with the teacher for that first layer of support. And
So Khan Academy is pretty good. So I think that that is a place you can keep looking from my experience with students. Another idea that I really would like to see more of our students sort of engage in more formally is study groups with each other. Students can really learn from teaching other students. So that's something else to consider, sort of encouraging your children to do. I really also support Allison's idea of having the student ask the teacher about resources, or you, the parent, can email and say, hey, if my child wants some additional support on this topic, do you have any recommended resources for them to check out at home? They could come to me and we can kind of figure out, like, if it's, planning an essay, like what sort of graphic organizer would work, and then they could kind of have a toolbox that they create over time for different sorts of assignments. So there's not like the one-size-fits-all sort of solution, but there's a lot of different ideas. So if you kind of don't mind reaching out to the different people to figure out what works for this class and that class, and encouraging your child to do that too as they develop that self-advocacy. I think everything's out there, and you can figure out how to put it together to support your student.
I promised myself I wouldn't say the word AI yet, and now I am. The one potentially scary, but also interesting and potentially very promising use of AI for our students can be in the tutoring realm. You can actually, I didn't know this until our new technology person gave us a little AI tutorial last week. You can actually ask AI to explain different ways of solving a problem for you. So if it's really not a good idea to have AI do any of the thinking directly on an assessment for you, like you don't want to say, okay, use AI to write your paper, that would be horrible. Please don't do that. But it is something to explore for if you're trying to figure out a different way of solving a math problem. You can log into ChatGPT and you can ask for different methods for solving problems. So you'll probably hear from us a lot about AI and some of the dangers and some of the things that we're struggling with, but that's one idea in terms of another thing you could try.
I do why homework, the app.
Why homework?
I don't know that one.
For math, called parents, why homework is an app, and then you put the equation in, and then it shows you all the steps and the answer. So that's how I learned the geometry stuff.
We also, I just want to put a plug in, we have peer tutoring here in the Academic Center. And I say that, and I also know and acknowledge that it's extremely hard for a kid to say to another peer, I'm struggling in geometry, but I will say that when we have kind of made it happen, we've seen some really positive peer interactions, and we've actually seen the student who's getting tutored gain a lot of confidence too, and have a lot of success. Actually, and I would even say a little bit more success than using an AI. Speaking of just study groups, I will say that is a social risk for that kid who's hey, I'm going to do this peer tutoring thing with this 18-year-old who's in AP Calculus, and I'm not good at math. But once that relationship develops, because it's in a safe space in the Academic Center, I've noticed, and just last year, I think the students that had that more successful was, I'm going to engage in peer tutoring along with doing an AI thing or using Khan Academy, because they got more from the student, because the student also had experienced that curriculum with that math department too. So they could kind of say, you can do it this way, but this teacher likes you to do it this way. So the kid learned both ways, but they knew, hey, on the assessment, the teacher's going to expect me to do it this way. So I just want to put a plug for peer tutoring and acknowledging that socially it's hard. So you're going to have to cheerlead them through, and that's what we'll help too, and we make it happen in a really nice, non-discreet or discreet way. The kids connect, and actually a lot of peer people who did peer tutoring eventually become the peer tutors in there. So it's a nice opportunity.
All right, y'all have been wonderful. I'm going to say it's 8:14 and folks probably want to get home. And if you have a question for one of us, come on up and we'll chat with you. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll send you all this information. Thanks for being here.